is my favorite. So, it is all very cozy, very holiday-y, and I am happy about it. Anyway, that is only partly why we're here. The other part of why we're here is that we are going to make a completely objective, not at all my personal opinion, history games tier list. So, I mean, we played a lot of games over 2022, as it turns out. 25 of them, in point of fact. 20... Like, that's a lot. I didn't realize there'd been that many. But yeah, we played 25 games over the course of 2022. And so we're going to go through all of them. And because we can, we're going to make a completely objective tier list on how they do history. Yeah. Yeah, it's more than 2 a month. It's wild. I don't know how we did it. But because I am completely insufferable and also in charge of it, of this channel, we are not just going to be doing a tier list. Right, we're going to be giving every game its fair shake, and we're going to be categorizing how they do history, and then we're going to be completely objectively evaluating whether or not it's good. Is this purely historical games or fantasy games as well? My definition of historical games is, did we play it on the channel? So, anything we play on the channel is historical, and anything that is historical is eligible to be played on the channel. Exactly, Amorphal. An academic tier list, because I am predictable. So yes, fantasy games are an entirely fair game, and some of the fantasy games will be tiered higher than some of the historical games. Spoilers. I make the rules around here. So, let's get into it. Let's get into it. Our tier list. We have a bunch of tiers here. The top tier is, of course, Pentiment. The second top tier is Fantastic History. The third one is one that is interesting in concept and maybe a bit in execution. We got Too Fast, Too Fantasy. And then we just have what? What? Like, what's happening? So we're just going to be adding... We're going to be adding text wherever we can. No. Every time we finish a game, we're going to be over here. Exactly! Some fantasy games are more historically accurate. See? You understand. You're around in the same channels. And thank you for the anonymous gifter for gifting Eldritch Horror of Bread a tier sub. And also to everyone else who is lurking, by the way, this is super participatory, so if you wanna hang out, comment, or if you think I get things wrong and wanna argue with me, I strongly encourage that this stream, we are all here to have a great time, so do feel free to hang out. So yeah, we also though need to find some way of actually evaluating it because, god, what happened at the start of this year? So, I've created a vaguely sort of, kind of, chronological tool for us to be able to do that. And Flowery Space Karate, thank you for the tier 1 sub. 8 months in a row, 9 months total. Hey, look, Aleph, it is the best game I've ever played. Not just the best history game, the best game I've ever played, and we love it dearly. So it's Pentiment here. But anyway, we've got a tool. I developed this tool about 6 months ago. I'm still fine-tuning it, so this, you are my guinea pigs. Yeah, I don't lie to you. You are my guinea pigs. We're going to be testing things to see how this works. And so we're going to look at every game that we play this year. Every single game. Oh no. That list just keeps going. Oh no. Oh god, there's so many games. What? We'll never be free. We'll be here forever. But yeah, here's how this works. There's so many games. The way this tool works is that we've got some form-fillable things to just give us some background information. So we have the title of the game, what setting it roughly is adapting, what place it's set in. This could be just fantasy. You could use this as the internal setting of the game, which is what I've done today, or you could use this for what the geographic space that's adapting from is, and then basically roughly what kind of game it is. Then we've got a bunch of categories on sliders. The sliders can go wee very awkwardly, you know. We can drag them around to wherever we need on the bar. And so realism is roughly how much it's doing the very present, quote-unquote immersive nonsense things. Looking at the scales makes you think you're determining these games' gender identities? Should we collect spicy takes on every game? Look, they're your channel points, you do what you want. The Blizzard Diversity Graph. Raptorus. It's supposed to be Dark Souls' character creator, not the Blizzard Diversity Graph, but you're right. Oh, that sucks. Pain. Coldston! Wolfie, thank you for the gift sub to Fossil of Dragon for your 484th gift sub in the channel. Holy shit. And KJ, with the community sub gifted out to J.A. Pasco. Thank you all so much. Anyway, realism, right, is a very on-the-ground, how well are you embodying a person, right? One person moving in something resembling real-time in a naturalistic environment, right? How real does this world feel? In a very, very, very specific way. Thank you. Happy holidays to you too, KJ. No, we need that for the ice skating video, but that will require subs. Now, the cosplay stream... the Andreas Mahler cosplay stream, we might make some channel points. But the ice skating one may require some actual money, unless if I get very lucky. Please, Andreas cosplay. Look, well, I'll set it up next Pentiment stream to have a community goal to try and make the Andreas Mahler cosplay happen. Okay? Okay? Anyway. 289,000. Oh, Christ. One day, you're just gonna decide to spend all those and we're gonna be in so much trouble. Okay, anyway. Right, realism makes sense. Conceptuality. Conceptuality is an issue. Oh, Wolfie. Give me some time to figure it out. Don't spend all your money on me. But yeah, I'll figure something out, okay? I'll figure something out. Let's get through the rest of this before I get completely in trouble here. Conceptuality is how well it's doing systems level stuff, right? So these are both types of simulation outlined in 2016 by Adam Chapman, different Adam. There's a bunch of scholarship behind this. I think he creates a false dichotomy, so we've fixed it. So the conceptuality is thinking, right, Paradox games are the ultimate conceptual sim, right? So we're very abstracted, we're looking at systems, and we're looking at how manipulating systems affects the sort of grander arc of history, right? Fictionality. This is going to be looking at, you know, is this purporting to be a real specific place with a real specific reference, or like real specific design, or is there magic, are there dragons, stuff like that. And so, right, the more anachronism we're getting, the more alternate ideas, alternate history, magic, dragons, yeah, mostly Magic Dragon's anachronisms are gonna move this bar up, and trying to use very specific geographic temporal areas are gonna help move that down. Referentiality is how much are they referencing real historical events, people, and texts. So, you know, Pentiments is somewhere around there. Pentiments is somewhere around there, but right, something that's not trying to reference things, I don't know, like Skyrim. And Skyrim is a historical game, as much as it hurts our souls to say it. Skyrim's going to be way down here. And then there's this weird third or fifth one called educational design. Basically, right, a game that's designed to try and teach people something. Things like encyclopedia entries within the game. Like mini games that are trying to do very specific things of communicating an educational goal, either explicitly or implicitly. Bibliographies in your reading or in your credits are going to make me think that this game is trying to be educational more thoroughly than a game that doesn't have any of that. So, you know, Pentiment here. Would fictionality be more like fantasticity? So, fictionality in my mind would immediately be closer to inversely linked to referentiality as you're describing it. Riley, you caught on to a really good point. These are pairs for a reason, right? Realism and conceptuality exist in tension with each other. So, you cannot create a game that is like this and like this. In the sense of verisimilitude, verisimilitude is a good sense. Right. Both of these kind of reach towards verisimilitude, but they reach towards different kinds of verisimilitude. Right? Realism is, you're thinking like, right, look, we'll spoil ourselves for later. Kingdom Come Deliverance is way the heck up here on realism. Right? It's something that's trying very hard to be on the moment, grounded, feels right. This is a construction, this is a fabrication, as all verisimilitude is. It is like being real, not actually being real. Sorry, yes, verisimilitude is the sense of being like a real thing. It's not actually a real thing, it is a selective thing, but yeah, it's full. Ooh, by the way, you got a copy of Cheese and the Worms today on recommendation of Hugh and Josh Sawyer. I can't wait to read it. Amazing. It is a classic for a reason. But yeah, anyway, back on topic. Realism and conceptuality exist in tension with each other. They're not exactly inversely linked, because then it's just two ends of a spectrum. But the more concerned you are with being like super duper realist, the harder it is to like meaningfully portray the abstracted systems, right? Because if they're both way up here, this is just called the real world. That's not a fun game. So things will try and prioritize specific things, right? You can get them both to about there pretty comfortably, but then as this starts pushing up, this is going to be linked to this, and it's going to start pushing this down. Same deal with fictionality and referentiality, right? You can create a highly fictional world that is also highly referential, but there comes a point where they're going to start manipulating each other, and so these aren't exactly inversely related, but they definitely exist in tension with each other. Educational design kind of exists on its own, because it's sort of an addendum. Right? So this is explicitly coming off of, if you bury yourself way too deep into Dark Souls character creator models, you'll notice that in order to create a face that functions, the sliders will start pulling on each other. It's super good. Graphics in real world has good lack saturation and artistic merit. Yup. By the way, those chat members who are saying you're totally going to use this in an academic paper, have I got news for you? I already did. I premiered this, hang on. Let me locate it. I premiered this in the Middle Ages in Modern Games 2022 conference, which took place on Twitter, which means it is actually relatively easy for me to find, but let me just scroll back down and find it, and we'll, figure out where the heck I am. Let's see. There it is. Let me pull this into the correct thing. Spoilering my other account. Hey, look. Did we mention that I've already done it? Obviously this is a conference paper. Obviously this is a conference paper, not a full academic work, but, you know, it is an academic conference. Also, follow that hashtag. All the papers in there are super fun. So, yes. Wonder if you could use this in my Crusader King series paper that I'm writing. Obviously give credit where credit to the idea, but yes, you have my explicit permission to go use this in your own things. If you wait, it'd take like a year for me to turn this into a fully published thing, but you can cite the conference paper if you want to use it before then. Or this. I guess you could cite this too. This is a recording that's going to be up on the internet forever, so have fun with that. So, what do you say with that? Let's get into it. You know, it's only been 30 minutes and we haven't even started tiering our 25 games. My phone's 100% going to run out of battery. This is going to get so scuffed here. Anyway. Let's do it. Game number 1, played this year, exactly once, just after New Year's Day. Disco Elysium. And honestly, what an incredible game, right? I played it once, I got through the first day, I was completely satisfied with what I accomplished and have felt no need to touch it since, because it was so satisfying. Absolutely phenomenal game. Like, highly recommend it, even though I've played very little of it. But yeah, like, best game in the last 20 years. I mean, it's competing with Pentiment, but you're allowed to have that opinion. But yeah, just as our filled-in text, right? Title's Disco Elysium. The setting, the time frame is like post-Soviet, sort of. I know the inspiration for it is specifically Baltic post-Soviet. That being said, within the lore of the universe, right, the Soviet Union doesn't exist, and so things get a bit wish-washy. The place is a fictional city called Revachol, but still, it's very, very much Baltic post-Soviet. Kim is best boy. That is a fact. And for lack of a better term, it's an isometric RPG, because it's working out of the tradition of, I don't know, Baldur's Gate, Planescape Torment, mostly Planescape Torment, until I mentioned Planescape Torment. So, God, I spent about 30 minutes staring at a statue, going through all of the arguments about cultural memory and artistic production that the game presented while we were just zoning out staring at a statue. And it was phenomenal. Because they couldn't decide whether this was crass or deep. And it was like really well done applied cultural memory studies theory. Mwah. Mwah. So, in terms of realism, right, obviously there's a lot of artistic stylization here, and also we are just, like, wildly a mess. We are almost too messy of a person to be real. And so, right, in terms of atmosphere, in terms of graphic design, right, they do a phenomenal job on getting grunge and grime. 30 minutes breaking down the symbolism of the statue is why I watch you. Well, that's great news, because... oh boy. So I would propose, right, it's fairly concerned with this moment, like moment to moment everything, but it's not like super duper concerned about that. I think what the game really shines at is its exploration of big philosophical systems, right? The fact that there is a murder that we are trying to solve is the least important part of Disco Elysium. This is all about individual actions playing into big systems and people's interpretations of the world being shaped by very high-level philosophical abstractions. So, you know, the muscle dude who is, like, sort of fascist, or like at the end of our own stream, we swore to overthrow the bourgeoisie and re-establish communism. And that's gonna presumably guide our actions. I don't know, I haven't touched the game since then. But, right, everyone, what they really do is they're like, while we can't necessarily manipulate the systems, it is very, very concerned with the conflict between those systems. Exactly, it's at least very much into eugenics and phrenology, which is weird. But right, that's a philosophical system that is being manipulated or filtered through a single person. And so the system is as important as the person here. And so they're close, right? They're close to even, about equally concerned with this like moment-to-moment existence in the world and these big broader systems and attempting to let the player navigate and to a small extent manipulate them. The point is though, right, systems are broadly not manipulable, and so mechanically, right, in terms of its mechanics, it is more realist. In terms of its social dynamics and its narrative, it feels much more conceptualist from the section I played. So I think those two are about even. It's fictionality, right? It's fairly fictional. It's more fictional than not. But it's not super duper fictional. Are I ever gonna finish it? I don't know. You know, I just haven't felt the urge to play it. I know it's fantastic, but I mean, one of the rules I have for myself on this channel is, unless if I'm not getting enjoyment or at least something resembling a desire to play the game, I should not play the game. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a little bit of an exception because I have professional obligations as someone with a graduate degree in Viking studies. But yeah, I mean, I was completely satisfied with that. If you guys want it though, we can definitely look into like picking that up again. Just let me know if that's something you're if you're super duper interested in, and we'll see if we can make time. But yeah, right. So this one I'd say is like more fictional than not, but it still isn't super fictional, right? The fact that it's clearly a post-Soviet corrupt state, it's way too close. So, you know, maybe this is what we do. Is that it's just slightly less fictional than it is more. But it's also, like, not super duper referential. I'd say it's about even on that. Right, these two are also pretty much even. These two are about here, these two are about here. because it's referencing a lot of real-world systems, but it's not referencing places or people that much. It's just the fact that, you know, communism is a thing, or hypercapitalism is a thing, or phrenology and eugenics are things. Right, so there's, like, some referentiality. But I feel like maybe these should be lower. I think maybe these both go, like, way the heck down here. In terms of educational design, I think it's probably middling in that it's actually a really good introduction to a lot of systems of thought. They took the care of writing, like, really thoughtful introductions, filtered through your main character's complete insanity. Right? Yeah, maybe they should be higher. Maybe they should be up there. Right. Maybe we put these two exactly even. Something like that? Right, it's not educational in the way that, like, I don't know, a Discovery Tour is educational, but they put the care into writing, like, really thorough introductions from a lot of different perspectives. So, I don't know, your rational brain versus your violence versus your just charisma, moxie brain, are doing wildly cool things. So, like, there's a lot of really good educational information there in a really compelling way. It's just so much writing, and the thing that's stunning about this game is just that there's so much writing. And they have to write the same thing through, like, 6 or 7 different ways for the different character, different, like, personality bits that you might build. That's... It's a shame that, you know, the studio exploded in the most dramatic bullshit way possible. It's wild that a game that is so, like, staunchly dealing with corruption and anti-capitalism got destroyed by corrupt capitalism. Absolute insanity. Alright. So, I think this one goes up here. Nah, maybe it goes right on this border here. Both as a game, it's way up in S tier, right? Like, it is such a good game. As a history game, I'm a little bit less sold, but only a little bit. Right, this is some good stuff. And so if you're liking historical theory, right, more than a historical setting, the thing that this game does is just historical theory and historical systems introductions super duper well. So, right, you could probably do a historical methods course just off of Disco Elysium. Right? Actually, I think that would be a really cool experiment. If there's anyone who does teaching, watching the VOD or in chat right now, you know what you should try? You know what you should try? If you do, let me know. I'm very curious to how that goes. Beautiful. So, game 1, check. Game 2, Gods Will Fall. Emmett and I took on this game back in early January. It exists. So basically, if you don't know this game, it was basically one of those that was, where the goal is to murder the gods, who are, and the game markets itself as being explicitly Celtic. So naturally, I got someone who specializes in Irish legendary literature on, because Emmett is cool like that. And we were playing, and we realized most of the gods aren't real. And their designs are insane, and they're like weirdly, sometimes they're really weirdly Gaulish, like Ugmios. It was funky. It was a funky game. So is it super realist? Not really. Like it's an action RPG. It is an isometric action RPG. So we're running through very heavily stylized levels. It's very much, gameplay-wise, it's very much like Jotun. Right? So, incredibly stylized levels that are very kind of elementally focused. You run through them, you fight a big boss at the end. Actually, I think that was probably the pitch for this game. It's Jotun but Celtic. It's also a roguelike, though, because we have like a cast of characters who all survived a shipwreck, and as we run through, if we lose, they get got, they die, they get trapped or die, and someone else has to go in there to help. Referentiality, it tries to reference a few things. Right, there are some references. Sometimes they're to Gaulish gods instead of Irish ones, but it happens. Kaboom. Non-existent educational design. Nothing about this game is attempting to be educational. I don't remember there being any sorts of like in-game encyclopedias, any of that stuff. This one pretty much just existed to be fun. But right, there are theoretically... let's pull down the number of references. Let's pull that up a little bit more. Pull the number of references down a bit more. Right, I would say it's something like that. This does note some sort of an issue. This might potentially note some sort of an issue here, but I think it just means that, right, it's neither trying to simulate a realist historical space, nor is it engaging with concepts, which suggests that there should be something else that's filling in this, but that might require... I don't know what that something else would be. Right? Chad, if you have suggestions for what a third slider that could be linked in here could be, let me know. Super duper fictional, though. Right, fictional island, sometimes fictional gods, enemy design is highly fictionalized, and the designs of the people is very, very much pop culture. Right, filtered through other fictional materials like Conan. So we have, horned helmets, list of random things, horned helmets, people running around shirtless, all that jazz. See, mentality, or other sorts of historical psychology, is a super difficult one. I want to come back to that with Pentiment, because obviously, I would say that that's realist, right? Something that's really obsessed with internal psychology and the way that manifests in perceptual experience, I think is intensely realist. But yeah, internal consistency. See, but that feels like more of a game thing, not a way that it's doing history. That's just, is game good? Or is games world building good? Right, this is specifically looking at ways games might do history. I suppose it's sometimes fair to say that sometimes a game is just trying to, right, be very gamic. In which case it's not doing a particularly realist simulation, nor is it doing a particularly conceptual simulation. It's just being very, very gamey. Ludo verisimilitude. More jargon. So, yeah. Chat. Good? Solidly a what? Huh? Deeply confusing. A deeply confusing thing. We walked into that so excited, and at the end of it we're like, wow, there's so much better material that they could be using. So, next up, Age of Empires 4. We played this, what, January through March. We got Jeremiah McCall on, one of the foremost theorists of teaching with games, to like talk about how you might actually approach this. It was a super good time. I think we played every single campaign, and the campaigns were super good, except for the parts where they weren't. I've not forgiven the English campaign for literally putting its systems out of chronology. So in the last 3 missions of the sort of tutorial campaign, it goes the French invasion during the Second Barons' War in 1216, and the attack on Dover. Then it goes to the Siege of Lincoln in 1215, and then it jumps ahead to 1217. Raptorus, the Mali and the Ottoman campaigns launched after we wrapped up our stream series of it. We might go back and do those. You know, I've been meaning to go back and do those. That's another one we may go back and do. See what some of the new seasons, new expansions have done. Cause yeah, Mali wasn't even in the game when we played it. So yeah, we may need to go back and look at that. So yeah, we did all the initial releases games, or scenarios. But yeah, so they did some weird things. This is a game, right? It's realism. It's not concerned about that, right? Hail hydrate. Right? It is not concerned with you being in a very embodied experience. We are floating on top of everything. Now, we will give it, let's give it some more points than that. We can start climbing the ranks here, because it does diversify its specific units, and its architectural styles are distinctive, based on what culture you're playing as, some of that stuff. They make some really weird choices about their Mongol everything, and its religious sites as mines. That was spooky. That was spooky. Yeah, Ovo's becoming automated mines was a choice. But what this is it's a very militarized conceptual space, right? Thinking about long-term historical development and thinking about like historical progression theories from quote-unquote Age of Empires 2's Dark Ages up to very Empire formation, early modern 16th century states. And so thinking about sort of the technological development of that, big historical arguments in its campaign design, right? About the formation of modern states mostly. Fictionality? It's super not fictional, right? It's supposed to be set in portraying real historical battles that illustrate real historical concepts using real historical entities. In the same vein, it is also highly referential because it is doing a bunch of real things. Do you know if there's been any scholarship on verisimilitude in games, particularly the player experience thereof? There has been so much research on that. Hang on. Tara Copplestone? Journal of Theory and Practice, 2017. But that's not accurate. The differing perceptions of accuracy and cultural heritage video games between creators, consumers, and critics. Let's see. Pardon, 2021. Oh, stop it. 2021 historical video game. Robert Hodden, who I do hope to get on stream soon, has expressed interest. Incredibly cool guy. Where is it? A lot of call for papers, Impact of modern media on undergraduate perceptions of history. Does some of that. And the introduction here to the Teaching the Middle Ages volume. There's going to be another forthcoming one in the introduction to the Playing the Middle Ages volume, which I have contributed to, coming out next year. Hopefully. We can pray. So, yeah, there's been this is just touching the start of it. James Sweeting in 2018 had one on authenticity and sort of constructing the past that's probably relevant to that. I could keep going forever. I've got entire folders of relevant scholarship. If you want more recommendations, pester me after stream, and I'll see what I can do. But yeah. Exactly, Prison. You did a lot of research for us on how they were doing the roofs, and that was super cool. Yeah, right, if you still have those notes, you should totally turn those into something. But yeah, this would be my rough sense. Oh, educational design. Really high. Right, this is a game that really wants to be used in high schools. Right, not only do they come out with they came out with an entire freaking, undergraduate course. Remember that? Remember that, chat? You can get college credit through a curriculum designed around this game that is available to anyone with an Xbox Live account. I mean, it's super cool. I love that they did that. I'm deeply baffled that they did that. Thank you, Relic? Question mark? So, educational design is through the roof. They've got text boxes they've got the unlockables at the end of every scenario that are videos and text boxes about historical concepts, which may or may not be relevant to the thing you just played. They've got narration-style voiceover at the intro and outro of each scenario that highlights what the concept you're supposed to grasp was, and they had an entire college curricula developed in coordination with the University of Arizona, I believe, that you could get a college credit at an undergraduate level at the University of Arizona by doing a curriculum attached to this video game. So its educational design is through the roof. Regardless of what the quality of that educational material, they are deeply, deeply concerned about that, and are portraying that in the game. Was it ASU? Was it Arizona State? It may have been Arizona State. I can't ever remember which of the two it was. Because I thought it had been University of Arizona, because I had a bunch of friends at ASU, and it was not that one. I might be wrong on that, though. Chad has the power to look things up. So do I, but... But yeah. Arizona State, then. Still. Super cool of them. Educational design is through the roof. So, now to the tier list. Typing is hard. So, there is a lot to like. There is a lot to like about what Age of Empires 4 is doing. They're picking much more diverse cultures than Age of Empires 2 did, though there's a lot fewer of them. They are really, like, concerned about education and what players are trying to get out of it, and they're trying to really diversify their understanding of historical progression by disconnecting some of the progression mechanics in really interesting ways. That being said, I don't like their historical narratives. I think a lot of their historical narratives are just bad. That they're manipulating history to create a very, like, high school level birth of nation states understanding of history. They're way too obsessed with tying the past into the present in ways that I find to be historically improbable. And some of their representation of non-Euro states still suffers, though it is better than Age of Empires 2. It still suffers from the fact that the assumptions that the game is making about how the age mechanic works is based on their entire technological militarized system is based on a very small slice of Western European historical progression, and is an egregious simplification even of that. So I'm going to put it right on the borderline here between being an interesting concept more than a good execution, and being, like, really good as a history game. So, you're right. Like a B+ tier. A solidly B+. Passing grade, but lots of room for improvement still. Next up, patron suggested games. Woohoo! Chat. So this game was suggested by our Patreon supporter and mod of the channel, Raptorus. This is at the $25 a month tier. Right, if you want to suggest a game, or rather, not just suggest a game, but guarantee that I play a game as soon as possible, $25 a month by clicking on that link goes right back into the channel to enable me to do more interesting things, get more guests on, and be able to actually compensate them for their time, do more fun stuff. So do highly encourage that as, like, the best way to help support that. But yeah, makes you suggest fun, weird games. So this was the first of the two that we had this year. Lego Indiana Jones: The Original Adventures. Also known as, why did VSync do that to us? The entire, like, solidly half the first stream was just suffering because VSync was turned off. Being Indiana Jones, it is set in the 1930s. The place is Earth but Lego. And it is a comedy action adventure game. So, is it realist? It's Lego. Is it conceptual? Oh. Wide slider. It's Lego. Is it fictional? Yeah. It is Lego. Is it referential? I mean, it's Lego, but it is also Indiana Jones. Spicy take. This is not the least historical game we played this year. Not even close. This is not even the least historical game that even if we cut out all the games that are explicitly fantasy, right? All the games that say we're not even trying to be historical. Even if we cut all those out, it is still not the least historical game we played this year. Right, is it historically referential? It's exactly as historically referential as Indiana Jones is, Aleph. So, you know, the fact that there are, you know, at least real cultures that are being referred to, there's something that occasionally vaguely resembles a 1930s archaeology lecture. Everyone knows all Indiana Jones media is virtually documentary filmed while the events were happening. True. Raptorus, I can get spicier. Uh, the fact that they mumble instead of having actual dialogue makes the Last Crusade's archaeology lecture in the Lego game a better archaeology lecture than the movie's archaeology lecture. Also, surprised Elgin marbles in India. That is a reference. That is a reference. It was a bit of a sheep reference, but it was a reference. Also, in the same level, the mirrored image of an actual, like, very plausible depiction of Shiva, I believe. I'm pretty sure we decided it was Shiva. It was just, like, mirrored? It was Shiva and Parvati. But reversed. Yeah. It was weird. It was so weird, but it is a reference, right? But it is clearly an implicit reference to a historical artistic style and religious figure. So, you know, we take that as a reference. The video about that will come out eventually. I've accepted my lot and just know that I cannot be doing YouTube videos right now while being enrolled full-time as a student and working 25 hours a week and streaming. So, you know, it's on the back burner, but it is gonna happen. So yeah, fictionality, like right in the middle, because it is 1930s. It is explicitly a historical time period. You know, no, a little bit higher because it's Indiana Jones, so a little bit higher than middle, and then a little bit higher yet because it's Lego. Educational design? Non-existent. This is a comedy game for children. The Hindu goddesses are so hard for me to tell apart, since like almost A is an aspect of B, that's an aspect of C, that's an aspect of A. Well, welcome to Hinduism. The gods are also like that, because it turns out when there's 4 major competing traditions in the quote-unquote Middle Ages that have only diversified further since then. But yes, you know, if you get Shivaist and Vishnuist all in the same room and ask them which god came first, they'll unite in beating you to death, and then argue for the next approximately 500 years. I've seen some of the commentary text about arguing which god came first. I've seen an English translation of them. Half that text was not translated. Half of it was just italicized Sanskrit words. I was just like, yeah, how am I supposed to actually read that when it's like 3 English words and then a Sanskrit philosophical term, and then 3 more English words and then another Sanskrit philosophical term. You know, we can probably pull these down further. It's Lego, and also it's Lego. Right. So, tier list. Solidly Too Fast, Too Fancy, right? They were also my childhood. Like, they were all, like, oh gosh. The original Lego Star Wars, at, like, various robotics events, they'd always have a machine set up in the corner that was just Lego Star Wars. It was phenomenal. Too Fast, Too Fancy, it's Indiana Jones, what do you want from me? Like, this is... The, it's just exactly the same as Indiana Jones is, and Indiana Jones is not good history. It's not even particularly interesting history. It's too fast, too fantasy adventure radio adventure pulp that happens to be filmed. That being said, I'm still hyped for the 5th Indiana Jones movie. It actually looks okay. Like, the trailer for Indiana Jones 5 came out, and it looks okay. Look, they figured out what works. It's an odd-numbered Indiana Jones movie with Sala in it. The track record is good. Right, Jonas Davies, being Sala. And it being an odd-numbered Indiana Jones movie. If it's good, if this is truly a pattern, I'll be delighted. But yes. So is Pentiment just going to be a quality tier going forward? Obviously. It's Pentiment tier. It is the one to beat right now. In terms of history games, we all know it. We're not going to hide it. Pentiment is the one to the game to beat. I mean, yes, Dadarian, but by the 1930s, things were a bit different. Right, 1910s, even as late as 1920 with like Howard Carter, 21? But especially right 1850 to 1920, truly anything goes. I believe there's a meme somewhere of we blame Heinrich Schliemann for the monkeys having dynamite in LEGO Indiana Jones. You know, so I feel it. I feel it in my bones. But things were changing by the 1930s. It was merely turning into exploitative colonial governments and universities having dubious agreements with pseudo-colonized governments. Yeah, like a lot of Harvard's Egyptian collection are because of an agreement with the Egyptian government in the 1930s to do excavation work, and the Egyptian government gets a cut and Harvard gets the rest. So, yay. Okay. So much for this, right? God. Chat. We're now, what, 4 games deep into the tool? How are we feeling about the tool here? I think this works super well. Ends up being super illustrative. But chat, I want to get an evaluation here, because I'm still developing this tool. Do you think this is like working and accurately summing up our thoughts? It's fun. Well, fun is good. If me typing in Google Slides is actually enjoyable content, we love to see that. But yeah. Awesome. Let me pour more tea, and then let's get into a phenomenal game that we played in, what, like March or early April? Blackhaven. Also known as the game that we broke out the Icon Code of Ethics for. I'm still a bit shocked you all showed up to watch that. To be honest, I am shocked you all showed up for the second half of that stream, where we broke out the PDF of the International Council of Museums Code of Ethics, and point by point, ding the Blackhaven Historical Society for being rubbish. Oh, it's later. I may be misremembering exactly when we did this. This may have even been in late January or early February. But don't worry, we are going to get to the Valentine's Day special. It's on the list. So yeah, Blackhaven. Realism. Super duper high, right? Because it's a walking sim. Actually, let's max that bar out. That is a maxed out bar right there. Because remember, right, the verdict was, Blackhaven Historical Society is way too real. It feels exactly like a shitty Confederate Appalachia house museum in the American South. Complete with the, like, really kitschy gift shop, the kind awkward audio tour that attempts to be hip but actually is like 25 years out of date, and all of the racism. No, it was way too real. February 8th. Okay. Wow. Earlier than I remembered. You were messaging your buddy at museum sites about during stream. Yeah, let's go. It's all... It's conceptuality, right? It's not super duper concerned with letting the player manipulate systems. Right. Broadly speaking, while it's aware of systems, you know, economic systems, sociocultural systems, and racialized systems of oppression and that sort of fund the promotion of cultural heritage. But the player doesn't get a chance to manipulate any of those, right? It is solely concerned about an extremely individualized, embodied experience, rather than letting people manipulate these systems to see the grand arc of history. Right. We're not doing any manipulation, we're doing very small acts of resistance. It does get more points than this, though, because it does have archival research, and the sheer ennui of doing digitization. And that is much more historical theory. It's in an embodied way, but, you know, historical theory earns us conceptuality points. So that bar goes up a little bit. But I'd say overall, right, it's not really concerned with super, in its mechanics and dynamics, it's not really concerned with letting the player visualize and manipulate the systems that go on behind the scenes. Right. I don't know how I feel about this one. If you disagree with, if you think this should be higher, let me know. Fictionality. Technically, the Blackhaven Historical Society doesn't exist. So, fictionality percentage, 2%. It's not completely non-fictional, but it is effectively non-fictional. That being said, it's also not particularly referential, right? It's somewhat referential in that they have a lot of... For legal reasons, it doesn't exist. Right, it's referentiality is one that I'm actually super not sure on, because the thing that makes this difficult is that, once again, the Blackhaven Historical Society doesn't exist. And so, the characters that they're referring to, the history of this town, and the archival documents are largely forgeries. That would suggest to me this. Right, very low referentiality. That being said, the artistic styles that they reference do exist. The stylings of the documents are extremely, like, correct to the various periods we talk about. And a lot of the museum stuff, if it's not actually artifacts, they did a really good job on referring to real artifacts used in the period. So all of that suggests to me a relatively high referentiality. Right? So maybe we just land that right in the middle, and we call it a day? Alright, Zoe. We'll be here for a hot second, so if you're back in the next, 2 hours, we'll probably still be here. But otherwise, good luck with your errands. Right, what's the feeling here? I think, just smack dab in the middle? Smack dab in the middle. Actually, smack dab in the middle is a little bit higher than that. There we go. Educational design. This was made by a university professor. The lead, Dr. James Coltrane, is a university professor in history. It's designed by a team he's leading, including his doctoral students and a collaborative network of other consultants. It's for free distribution. It's... yeah. If a bad Confederate museum called Blackhaven did exist, but I'd never been there? I mean, in that case, I'd say the referentiality goes up, right? If everything in that, if it's just the people are real, and the Historical Society is real, and the thing they're doing with it is real and identifiable, even if I'm not aware of it, right? I mean, if I'm just not aware of it, then it starts out like this. If someone corrects me, and I look into that and go, oh, it is. The referentiality skyrockets. The fictionality barely moves because it can't go any lower. Right? It'll go lower. By that 2% that it can go lower. And that's the extent of the changes. Okay. So that's what I've got here. Lovely V-shape. Next up. Blackhaven. Let's go. Alright, Blackhaven Historical Society, where do you want to go? Is it a pentiment here? Is it a pentiment? I think it might be a pentiment here. I had a lot of fun with that game. That game is uncomfortable, but uncomfortable for the correct reasons. I think it's pentiment here. Yeah. That was so much fun. I haven't seen that the sequel, Cassius. I haven't seen that it's come out yet, but, well, I am keeping my eye out for it, because the moment that drops, we're jumping on that. Right, the soonest we can, we're gonna jump on that. Alright, so much for this one. On to the next one. Inoa, A Story in Ice and Time. Before we do this, just want to shout out the soundtrack that you're listening to is a holiday playlist created by Overclocked Remix, which is a free and delightful video game remixing community. Looks like we're going to rapidly run out because there's only 34 tracks in it. So if you've been enjoying it, do click on the... I believe that link will work. But yeah, do check out ocremix.org as well, because the work that the remixers do there is incredible. Anyway, back into the show. Inoa. If you missed this, this is one made by an Inuktitut team set around various elements of Inuk history. So, you know, the 3 time periods in the game, obviously spoilers. Franklin Expedition, 1846. Roughly the 1960s, with an army photographer, and the present. The place is in the high Arctic, though exactly where, right, it moves around. Ludic genre? I didn't know what to put here. I don't know how to classify this game. I'm not going to try. Point and click? Yeah. Question mark? That's probably about as close as we get. Yeah. That being said, not super duper realist, right? Even though we're embodying characters and exploring their perception and their thoughts, all that bumps up the realism. But it's so stylized and jumps around, and there's not, right, it's not concerned with the physical sensation of being stranded in the Arctic. Right? That would be something that I would think would make something be more of a realist simulation. But if it's a simulation that's like really like a survival game where you're in the high Arctic and you have to deal with managing extremely limited food supplies, you don't actually have to do that mechanically, right? That's not a thing the game's concerned with, though there are narrative beats that tie into that theme. So, right, its mechanics are just not super, or you're not, like, trying to winch up the things themselves, like really trying to do the examination work yourself, do the research. The characters do all that for you, and you get to explore the consequences of that. So mechanically, it's like not a super realist simulation, but its social dynamics push that up to be a little bit realist. What I think this game really is... Oh, wide bar. Is really heavily conceptualist. Right? Not as much as, say, Age of Empires. But the thing that's super cool about this game is that it's conceptualist for a not Western Euro academic understanding of historical conception, right? This is part of one of my favorite emergent genres of games, which is indigenous teams developing games that tell indigenous stories in indigenous ways. It's amazing. So it's all structured around a folktale and the perceptions of time and causality of the folktale. And that's good. Like, that's just super good. We love that. I'm a big fan. So, I think up here in the conceptuality makes sense. Fictionality. Jazz party. We'll see if this one gets me copyright claimed. If this whole video gets demonetized, big rip. Right. It's a bit fictional. And yes, this is a Super Mario World and Sleigh Ride mashup. Big fan. It's above. The OC Remix community is unfairly talented. I wish I was that good. Right, it's a bit more fictional than Blackhaven is, right, Red Forest? But still is not super fictional. And it's actually no, it's pretty referential. It's pretty referential in very painful ways. Like the being scared of the plane flying overhead because the plane means residential school pickups. That was a rough moment. Oh, I was should have predicted it, but right, in hindsight, should have predicted it. In the moment, did not predict it, got. Educational design, I'm gonna put this as moderately high, right? Not super duper educational, but right, something like Never Alone is much more referent or much more educationally designed than Inua is. But I think it still is, because, right, kind of the very nature of it being designed by Inuktitut teams to tell Inuktitut audiences or Inuktitut stories to a broader audience means that like there's a lot of very subtle educational material in there. Exactly, Never Alone has literal like video documentaries with Inuk elders talking about the stories, talking about their culture, and it is, I mean, that's really cool. But this one integrates that into the story in really subtle ways to have the characters be talking about concepts, right? And so if you're looking at Cairns in an Inuit perspective, right, well, you have a scene that lets you illustrate that. I mean, the game builds situations into its narrative that are going to be educational. It's not like stopping you and saying, hey, we're teaching you something. It just trusts that the audience is interested enough, and that the quality of information presented is high enough that you'll get something out in understanding the cultural history, right, the culture and cultural history of the Inuktitut. I think I'm doing that right. I also I know minimal of any of the relevant languages, and by minimal I mean pretty much what the game taught me. So, apologies if I have butchered any of the words. If you're watching in the VOD, and no, do correct me, please. I'm always happy to be corrected. Yeah. But yeah, so much for this one. Alright. Lufia 2. Never heard of that game before. So, I'm going to put this one... I think, like, just like a smidge above Age of Empires 4. Right, they're almost uncomparable games in a lot of ways. Nah, maybe a little bit higher. So, somewhere in, like, this range. It's trying to do different things, and I think, right, there were significant places where I could have, like, improved, because it's setting up a rug pull, for so much of the game, that the rug pull hits fantastically, but I think some of the raw, like, the history game understanding could be enhanced more by either leaning into it less to give you more, Inuk perspectives, or leaning into it more and having like more mini games, more stuff that lets you do this very westernized traditional narrative sense of historical research and trying to get the big scoop. So I think that there's definitely room for improvement, but somewhere in there, good game, very good game, super recommend. Also, if it wasn't clear yet, spoiler warnings for every game we're playing here. Chad, are you ready? Definitely one of the weirder ludic genres to end up. Definitely one of the weirder ludic genres to have on the historical games tier list. Comedy dating sim. Wee. Wee. Huh? Can't be anything about perfect rating. You know, you're correct. You're correct. Perfect. 10 out of 10. Never read a game like it. The only possible rating. Right, there's clearly only two options here. This. Or this. You remember seeing the historical evidence for flirting with a town itself. Exactly. Yup. You're trying so hard not to laugh while Hey, I was trying so hard not to laugh while playing the game. I failed. So, you know. Look, the actual rating is that this is, extremely highly fictional. Duh. And it is, somewhat less referential. The towns are real. The goat is real. The places are real. Historically accurate Avelsness is real. That's why it's not... Look, the goat and historically accurate Avelsness are the only reasons this is not maxed out. But right. I mean, this is the serious, no fun allowed tier. Right, no fun allowed, actually useful academic thing. This is what this looks like. I know what must be done. I'm just not strong enough. Let's not think about that anymore. Moving on, God of War 2018. Turns out, that was also this year. Luca Pinaro came on and joined us for this entire thing. Yes! I have given the people what they want! Okay. Right. So, in terms of the style of simulation, this one's intensely everything, Raptors. All of my dignity. The entire academic credentials of this entire tier list has been ruined. But yes, God of War 2018. Kind of like the definition of a realist simulation, right? In terms of an intensely embodied, individualized experience, it doesn't have a camera cut. You cannot get more in a single body than that. It is a single shot of the video game, where you are playing as one person and navigating the world as that one person. That being said, it gets docked as a realist simulation in a few ways. Firstly, you don't need to eat. Right? Second, you're a god. So, it has some... Right, it's not really simulating what it's like to be as a person, it is just putting you solidly squarely in the perspective and experiences of one person. Conceptuality, this is super duper not conceptual, right? I think God of War Ragnarok is going to be slightly higher than this, but the first game is really not concerned with bigger questions of divinity, of, I don't know, worship and of sort of the behind-the-scenes mechanisms that are controlling everything. It's not concerned with any of that. So, honestly, we could probably go almost all the way down here, and I think that that's right. Fictionality, it's pretty, like, middling. So, right, it is nominally using... Well, let's talk about the referentiality first, and then we can go back to the fictionality. It's set in Norse mythology. Every character is a reference. They're referencing, right, a bunch of the stories reference real things. I don't know, Mimir is Puck, and so references Oberon and Titania, by name. The material culture is extremely Norse, right? Stereotypically Norse fantasy. And so there's a lot of specific references there. They have runes everywhere. Every character. So that gives us really high referentiality, right? Not the highest possible referentiality, but like really high referentiality. In fact, we can probably move this up a bit more. No, right, we docked that for reasons. I'd say it's also actually pretty fictional. I'd say it's like up here. Because... Not necessarily because it's in mythic space. Yes, because it's in mythic space, but not just because it's in mythic space. It's also, right, our anachronisms are gonna hurt us here. You know, the fact that we use Elder Futhark and everything, instead of Younger Futhark. The, like, weird giant turtle things that are not in there. All the random mobs that are not from the mythology, that are just like random mobs because we need this like zombie apocalypse Norse mythology. Stuff like that, right? All is gonna bump up that fictionality level. Also, you know, Kratos. Kratos goes a long way to upping the fictionality layer here, just by virtue of existing. Right, so right, I typically don't dock points or say being mythological or set in a legendary milieu necessarily makes the game more fictional. I mean, it does a little bit, right? It will by nature of being a legend, block it out the bottom 25%. You can still end up at that 25 to 50%, but there's a lot of things in here that are just kind of doing stuff. Educational design. Non-existent. The game's not concerned about that. Turtles all the way down, well-known concept in Norse mythology. You're right, how could I have forgotten it? This was in my intro lecture, I should have known this. God of War 2018. I think smack dab in the center of the tier list here. Here's why, right? Firstly, they're making a lot of changes. They're making the changes for reasons, but they're still making a lot of changes. And two, there's some fundamental things, right? I talked about this at the very end of that stream, but there's just some fundamental stuff in the presentation of the entire scenario that just doesn't do it for me. Specifically the understating of the extent to which these worlds and networks are linked. And the fact that we're operating like these super separated cosmologies and travel between them kind of just happens sporadically by talented individuals who do stuff. Don't love that. I think that causes some big issues with diversity and not doing enough to make it unfriendly. Another place where God of War Ragnarok is going to end up actually above it. But yeah. So solidly right in the middle. Super good starting place. Historically, has some room for improvement here. Right, I mean, turning this down obviously bumps up the tier list position, I think. But yeah, I guess we could arguably like a smidge of educational design in the Jotun Shrines, but that premise for the Jotun Shrines is definitely just done better by Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, so whatever. Hey chat, how many people actually watched this whole series? Because this sure was a video game. Right, the most common piece of feedback I got was the premise of the streams was incredible and great fun. I wish you did it with a better game. Because this was Colonialism the MMO by Amazon. Chat, what's the thought? Do you reckon that the particular choice of references in God of War or other games meant themselves count as educational as much as it conceivably incentivize others to look up those references? Aleph, I specifically separate those two because, right, there's a reason why I call this educational design rather than educational value. Because you're right, that is an important thing. That is a starting place for a lot of research into historical games. Right, the idea that they can incentivize others to look up references, genuinely learn something. I don't give credit to the game itself for people taking incentives. What I'm specifically looking at here are tools within the game, or specifically promoted by the game, in order to facilitate that research. So, right, if we look at Age of Empires, right, they have those videos and those text boxes and the curriculum that are all designed to incentivize and reward that research. Maybe that. Right, I give it the barest amount of realism, for being, that you're playing an individual character. You know, let's give it the barest amount of conceptuality, too. Right, it has a little bit of realism, in that you are playing an embodied character, and you can do a bunch of theoretically historical things, woodworking, blacksmithing, textile work, cooking, brewing, etc. Cool. You're not necessarily going to starve to death, but you do need to do those to heal, so it incentivizes you to at least vaguely behave like people. So you can go out and gather herbs, you can go out and hunt animals, you can behave in ways that are kind of like real people. Kinda. We give it a little bit of conceptuality because there is an economy, there are towns, it's a nonsensical economy, the towns don't work, but they exist, so, you know, there's at least engagement with things that they know are supposed to be historical systems. And ZXL Almighty, hello again. Thank you for the 5 months of Prime subs. Fictionality. This needs no explanation. Referentiality, they do reference a bunch of historical things. Newton, they referenced Newton at some point, it was wild. Educational design. Negative quadrillion. Literally every time they attempt to explain a subject, they get it wrong. And not just a little bit wrong. Badly wrong. Chat, who remembers the aqueduct? Yeah, the economy that was ironically the best simulation of colonialism, in that the governors of the towns would exploit the server, enrich themselves, and then run away. Yes. That one. You know, it earns points for being a pitch-perfect representation of colonial economic systems and the corruption inherent to them. And so it actually earns points for me for that. That's one of the few places the game earns points, and it was certainly not on purpose. But, you know, a win's a win. But yes, the aqueduct. So, the aqueduct had a whole side quest, right? This was when we had Dr. Bill Farley on, which was incredibly fun. But it had a side quest, a whole side quest that was like, we need to figure out how old this aqueduct is. And I'm like, you know, fair enough. Ambiguously ancient thing, let's try and do this. So, what we did was we gathered rubble that had fallen off the aqueduct, so that the NPC could do weathering analysis and chemical analysis. Alright, Aleph. Thank you. Enjoy your session. Weathering analysis doesn't work because we don't have a good record of the climatological conditions. Chemical analysis doesn't work because the technology was developed in the 1960s to do potassium argon dating of stone materials. Now, in order to collect these rubble sediments, by the way, we had to kill skeletons that were on top of the rubble, which would give us a terminus ante quem, an end that it must be before. For what year it is. You could have just done radiocarbon dating on the skeletal material. Way easier. Technology still doesn't exist in the early modern period, but at least it's, you know, a recognizable thing. So anyway, they do that analysis, and the number they spit out is, well, we thought this was like, maybe like 10,000 years old? No, it's older than that. It's not 50,000 years old. It's not 100,000 years old. It is 12 million years old. And no, that's not the date of the stone. That's the date at which the aqueduct was constructed. This aqueduct was 50 feet tall, made of granite, and in a bog. As I said, the educational design is in the negatives. Is this apparent? No, Lidsell. The game was unfortunately unironic. My streams were parodies. You know, KJ, you're right. I'm being too generous to it. That's better. Does it still even exist? Yes. Yes, the game is somehow not dead yet. It's close, but it's not dead yet. I at least got an email saying, hey, you know you should log in for the winter event. I was like, no, I shouldn't. So. Now. Pyre. This was another patron-suggested game, suggested by Leander Tucker. And again, if you want to also suggest a game, do head over to patreon.com/Ludohistory, or if you are in chat, click on that link right there. in order to head over, it is that $25 a month tier. 2023 I'm going to do a better job of actually updating y'all, but y'all are in chat all the time anyway, so it felt like I wasn't necessarily doing a lot. But yeah, if you want to suggest games, bump them up to the top of my list. It's $25 a month. Basically, so I can afford to buy. I can guarantee I can afford to buy the game. And guarantees at least 4 streams of it, and me trying to take the history and it's like super seriously. Plus design diatribes, plus eventually YouTube videos. It's a good time. So, Pyre is a fantasy sports ball simulator. It's also a history of civil unrest, the fall of the theocratic state, and the people who make that happen. So what the heck do we do with it as a history game? I think the realism and conceptuality are exactly, like, middle. I don't think it's more realist than it's conceptual, I don't think, right? Because we control a person, but we also control the entire thing of the Nightwings, telling them what to do. It's also, right, concerned with systems, like a very fictionalized system of redemption, and how that ties into corruption, religion, and historical memory, and class. I mean, that is a really cool historical topic, right? There's a manuscript that has been largely censored, that is the backbone of the theocratic state that we have access to. And so there's the permutations of past events into various types of memory, trying to do various things. That being said, the one thing we'll be super confident on is that, like, straight up super duper fictional. Right. Its fictionality is pretty much maximum, because it is in a fictional world. We play in an airship, we are doing fictional rites, all that jazz. As is, yeah, literally the ability to read is forbidden. Yeah, but the contents of the text are in a very, very heavily filtered form, handed down from the state to the citizenry. The referentiality is basically null, right? They're not referencing real things. The closest we get is referencing technologies like the printing press. You're not winning a whole lot of points for saying printing presses exist. Educational design. Also, basically nothing. Yes. Pyre is the game with basket rugby ball rituals set in purgatory. You are correct. I think you end up somewhere with this. Right? There's some historical concepts, a lot of, like, historical memory and cultural memory. There's some realism, but yeah. I think that's pretty much where our map of it as a history game looks like. Huzzah. The question is, what do we do with it as a history game? I think this ends up in the Too Fast, Too Fantasy. Right. I think this is Too Fast, Too Fantasy. But it goes above Lego Indie. Because it at least does historical concepts. Even through a heavily fantasy lens, it does historical concepts and memory studies better than Indiana Jones does archaeology. So, Too Fast, Too Fantasy. There we go. Anyway, welcome back. We just finished talking about Pyre. Now, another delightful game. This game was so cute. I loved this game. Also, another noble entry into the indigenous people making games about indigenous histories. Except this one, it's Sami instead of Inuktitut. Realism, super duper high. Conceptuality. Right, this one I don't think... This was an amazing game. So we play as a... if you missed the stream or join the community afterwards, Scabma is made by a group of developers in... A group of Sami-led developers in Finland. And so we play as a young boy who becomes a no-ID, or shaman. Let's put that in this. Super heavy scare quotes. Attempting to save his family from a weird mysterious disease that is separating their physical soul from their body and life force. It's bad. Bad times for... It's a good game. It's a bad times for your family. And so we tame, or we sort of harness the power of various animal spirits, who are also vaguely elemental spirits, in order to figure out what's going on and save the world, question mark? Also, it has a horrible swamp level. Hooray. Now, unlike Inuwa, I think this is a game that is really not particularly conceptual. The ecological devastation going on in the background of Swedish colonization is super relevant, but like what's actually going on there, not... It's all very background stuff, and we don't get to really interact with those systems at all. I expect the next game is going to be more conceptual as we move into more folkloric lens, but it's in apparently in very, very early stages of development, apart from existing, or hopefully existing. We don't know anything about it yet. Fictionality. It's somewhat fictional, but it's not, like... Right, you know how I was saying being in like a legendary milieu basically locks you out of the bottom quarter? But you could end up in that 25 to 50 range pretty stably. I think this is a perfect example of that game. Because it is legendary. Right. The spirit travel of the No ID and their... what is it? Go at these is the name of the drum, I think. Right. It is powers that do not exist in the real world. But still isn't, like, particularly fictional, right? Also, the characters are fictional, but the lifestyle is very real, right? The reindeer herding and the semi-nomadic family thing that underpins the whole thing is there. Conceptuality is thinking about historical systems. So, right, Ailey, when I say conceptuality, the slider all the way over is a paradox game. Where it's taking this very broad systems-driven approach, and then having mechanics that allow the player to interact with the systems of history, and sort of pull on those threads on a very high-level scale. So, yeah, the extreme end is paradox games. Everything else sort of goes down from there. Right, like, Inuwa, right, being concerned with, like, folktale repetition, and its whole sort of end framing device that I won't totally spoil, ends up being pretty conceptual, because that's a high level. It's not looking at one person, or one embodied experience. It's looking at a sort of big historical thing through indigenous ways of knowing. Where are we? We are over here. Referentiality. I'd say it's pretty moderate, right? It's not referencing a ton of real things, but it's also not referencing a ton of real things, right? The No ID are a real concept. The persecution that they faced in the early modern period is a real concept. The destruction and loss of the Goadis and the No ID as a people, real concept. The French naturalists showing up in Samiland to try and do categorization is a real thing. Reindeer being cute, real thing. The Great Bunny Heist? 100% a real thing, I promise. Last note on Pyre? I think Pyre is a great game to discuss because it's historical meta concepts. Exactly. Memory, religious experience and dogma, expansionism, historic, like, evolution of ideas. But yeah. And the ways history is not preserved. Yeah. Exactly. Which is why I think we put it on the top end of Too Fast, Too Fancy, is that there is a lot of value in there. It's just, you know, no, I feel like maybe that goes up in here. Because there are super interesting concepts, it's just not real-world history. But yeah, good note there. You summarized it so nicely that I'm bumping it up in the tier list just for that. So, amazing. Educational design. Right, there's some. Mostly it's the chests having real objects. I can't really think of a lot of other things in the collectible. Maybe some of the notes, but those are mostly to look at how, what was his name, Jean-Francois? Is a hopeless romantic, rather than actual naturalism notes. So maybe this goes even farther down. Maybe that's down there. I think that's a good snapshot, right? Let's hit up the tier list. Thank you. Let's see. Scabma Snowfall. It is very comparable to Inua, but I think goes below Inua. I think that's going to go over here. I think there's a lot of room to, like, really create alternate modes of history. Still in this, I think for the first stab, really great game. Really excited to see what the next game does. Right, and again, right, this tier list is the game a good game? It is a phenomenal game. If this was a tier list of just how much fun did I have playing it, it would be on the upper edge of A tier. But this is not that. This is how does it do with history. I think it's got a lot of good ideas. I think there's a lot of room for innovation to really, like, elevate the history underpinning it. Next up, Ender Lilies. Really low realism. And as low things. Oh, hello. A stream. Hello. Blues, is this a compliment about Scabma or about Ender Lilies? You are late. We are doing a tier list. It's been 2 hours, so let's actually hit that. Let's hit that tier list again. Or explanation of what the heck we're doing. So, what the heck we're doing is we are making, out of all the games we played over the last year, we are making a tier list. Ranging in tiers from Pentiment all the way down to what the hell. So this is a tier list of the quality of the history. You know, whether I think they do really fantastic stuff, more interesting concepts, less interesting execution, Too Fast, Too Fantasy, and, what the hell. You'll observe, Disco Elysium is almost Pentiment tier, and obviously Pentiment is Pentiment tier because it's Pentiment. We're not there yet, though. In order to help us structure that, we are using a tool I developed about 6 months ago that I call a Character Creator Classifier. So that we can take the game, fill in some information about what it is, what it's doing, and then rate it on see what it's doing on like 5 different scales. Right? Realism, how much are we doing an embodied experience with all the nitty-gritty boring shit that comes with being an embodied experience. So right, a sort of survival game is going to have very, very high realism. We'll get to that. Conceptuality is how much do the systems of the game engage with high-level historical concepts, and so allow you to sort of manipulate the threads of things. So, right, Age of Empires is going to be very conceptual because that's kind of the whole point. Is that you're manipulating a 700-year spread of history and the development of the various cultures in it in order to do violence. Fictionality, oh, way down here. Fictionality is, you know, how much of this is in a real historical setting or claims to be in a real historical setting versus how much of it is in a perfectly fictional one with all of the trappings and magic and nonsense that attaches to. Referentiality exists in tension with fictionality and is how many explicit historical references are there in material culture, in narrative, in name drops, weapons, etc. So something like Ender Lilies here actually is going to be somewhat referential, not super referential, but somewhat, right? All that Gothic architecture has to go somewhere. You know, actually this is pretty low referential. Mostly it's just the Gothic architecture has to go somewhere. And then this weird fifth slider is what are the tools in the game to help people learn more about the history that they're adapting. So, encyclopedias, bibliographies in the credits, all that stuff. Going to increase your educational design score. If you don't have any of that, you get a 0. Realistically, this is probably what we're looking at here. Referentiality in this one is as high as it is, because a lot of the bosses are references. So, right, the boss Jared is actually Geirröður. Ulfr. Right, there's a heavy dose of butt Nordic thrown into that in the references that bump that up a bit. Otherwise, right, we're looking pretty low across the board here. This is not a game that's trying to be historical, but we played it on the channel and therefore it's historical whether it wants to be or not. If I could type, that would be good. Ender Lilies, squarely too fast, too fantasy, right? Like, beautiful game, love it dearly, too fast, too fantasy. But yeah, the music ruled, the gameplay is really fun. It's one of the best Metroidvanias I've played in years. Highly recommend the game. It's a historical fantasy game with light references to various entities, social structures, architecture, and Nordic legendary material. Did saying that the gameplay is fun and the music is beautiful and I love the game dearly not count as a compliment, Blues? Blues! You're killing me here. Next up, The Forgotten City. We played this back in June? Right before I went on summer vacation. Phenomenal game. Realism. Realism go way up. Okay, what? Okay, neat. The music felt a bit loud. But yes, this was the game with the golden moments. Right, realism. It's a puzzle RPG walking sim. In terms of realism, it is super duper high. Right, as a realist simulation, it's super duper high. In terms of the letting you walk around, experience the diversity of the Roman of like the early Imperial period, super duper high. Alright, I mean, everyone dies in... That's a spoiler, ain't it? Spoilers. It's all in the reign of Nero that things get started, so... Conceptuality for this one is a really tough category to land, right? Because it's not like it's unconcerned with systems, but you're not allowed to manipulate the systems per se. Or rather, the systems that you are allowed to manipulate are not real-world ones. They are, what are the conditions where everyone dies? So I feel like it's just like way the heck down here. And the moment it starts to do more historical memory representational things, we get hit by Stargate. We pretty much just get hit by Stargate. This entire chunk of fictionality is the meta plot. Educational design is also a weird one, right? There's not a ton of... There's definitely a fair amount, because you're able to talk to all these people, but there's not like encyclopedia stuff, you're not taking notes about that, there's no links to other content. You're mostly just talking to people and letting their lived experiences inform the extent to which you think the early Imperial period works. And that being said, they do a really good job showcasing somebody of everybody. And also, the thing literally ends in a museum, so we can't really say it's not trying to be educational. Right. Cultural history, aliens, cultural history. Yeah! No, let's bring this up a little bit more, because it does have that weird Ancient Aliens... Right, thinking about like historical progression and adoption. Right, there's the whole obelisk quest. That was just weird. It was the most explicitly, right, doing capital H history on a wide scale. I just found it to be not very good. But, right, just found to be not very good. So, we give it some conceptuality points for that, but its execution is somewhat lacking when it starts trying to do big historical concepts. It's at its best where we are doing a very, very small thing of manipulating an election. Hooray. Sweet. Over to the Tierlist. Was that another one? The Forgotten. If you like The Forgotten City, though, I do happen to know our good friend of the channel, Alexander Vandermala, who has been around, has been putting blog posts about The Forgotten City from his blog Paisaman in the Discord. Let's drop the link. Let's drop the link to one of those. I've got the power. This is a link to the final post in the series, dropped in chat now. But, you know, there's this, I think it's a series of 3 blog posts. So, more Forgotten City content from classicists who know this history better than I do. So, Forgotten City is ranking on the tier list here. I think goes about there. I think it's like almost exactly on par with Age of Empires 4 in terms of, like, raw quality. Cause, right, it does, if we are talking about its cultural history, it's, like, up here. But for me, its historical thing, right, the moment it tries to do big H, conceptualize history, it goes way down here. So I think that averages out to be right in the middle. Maybe just a smidge on the higher end. Maybe this also goes a smidge on the higher end. There we go. There's a class worth of people currently watching this, right, Ludohistory? It's wild that people have been coming in and out, but right, like, there's like over 30 of you hanging out here, and that is wildly... The fact that you all think this is, like, fun content is incredibly heartwarming. Don't let me forget that. Next up, though. Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Also known as our dear sweet boy Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is my favorite. Realism. Low. This is a visual novel. We're not really closely embodying a single person. We're not doing all the things that a person would have to do to stay alive. This is a puzzle game. Because realism is low. Its conceptuality is lower. Apart from, overthrowing the government a little bit, we're not really engaging with a lot of the systems of navigating sociality in Victorian London. We're really not. Fictionality, it's pretty steampunk, so it's a little bit fictional, but it's not super duper fictional, right? We're in a real setting, namely Meiji Tokyo / Victorian London. We're doing real things like spending 60 days on a steamship. We're dealing with real things like boarding up... The fact that you have to board up windows because they had a window tax in the 1830s. And the dank and darkness that causes. Also a lot of racism. So it's like there. It's like solidly middling. Its referentiality is a little bit high, though it often hides its references, right? Like, Sherlock Holmes is Sherlock Holmes. Madame Tussauds is Madame Tussauds. You know these references, even though they're concealing them. So I give them credit for that. Mostly it's Sherlock Holmes references, though, let's be honest. Exactly, the strained and Russo-Japanese relations coming out of a war. The Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation. That's a real treaty. Like, it's... Yeah, no, we can go higher. I believe in us. I think this is a shockingly referential game. They're not all from the same moment. Not even slightly. There's kind of a big chunk between about 1875 and 1910 that this game could take place in. Oh yeah. Sosuke Natsumi exists. May you also refer to... What year is it? Exactly. Educational design. Minimal. Like, they're not doing anything to enable you to be learn about this. They just happen to reference a bunch of real things and leave it up to you to realize that they're real. Yeah, the name Sherlock Holmes has an interesting history to it because it is from LeBlanc, isn't it? Isn't it Maurice Leblanc that does it with the Lupin or the Arsène stories having Sherlock Holmes? Yeah, how to not get copyrighted by the Arthur Conan Doyle Foundation. Yeah. Arsène Lupin. Yeah. We love. So I think we end up somewhere like this. This is like solid, right? Exactly, right. The first Ace Attorney is supposed to be a satire of like 1990s Japanese judicial system. Since then, it's kind of gone off the rails, right? I would not call this particularly. I'd call this a satire of, like a very Dickensian satire of the iniquities of Victorian London, layered over a very absurdist Sherlock Holmes steampunk flair. But right, now let's pull that down a bit more. I think we end up somewhere with there. That being said, I think it's a better history game than the Forgotten City is. Oh, that's a spicy take, isn't it? Oh, I felt that one in my bones as I said it, and I know it to be true. But oh man, the comments are gonna come at me on this one. Maybe we can bump up Forgotten City a little bit. Oh, confident both games to balance it out. Right. GA Chronicles, right, is one of those where every time there was something we're like, this can't possibly be a reference. What the heck are they doing? They're like, it turned out it was a reference. And so the sheer quantity of references, even though they're not necessarily using them super thoughtfully, is just wildly entertaining and ends up, like, getting into some pretty heavy topics in a way that feels super duper fun. And Forgotten City, right, as I said, when it's doing cultural history, when it's just, the best part of the game is just walking around talking to people, not when we're getting into all the plot stuff, but just letting their lived experiences air out and have those relationships and have that diversity and get to know those people as people is an incredibly powerful historical tool, and we should not understate that. Can we elaborate on what it is about Age of Empires 4 and Forgotten City? Yeah. So, my big complaint with Age of Empires 4 is that when it's good, it's really good, but the narratives it's trying to present are not particularly nuanced, and it ends up doing some pretty, like, history sin level manipulation of evidence and events in order to fit its narrative. It's working backwards, and I dock it a lot of points for that. Forgotten City, right, has the stupid sci-fi, the Stargate metaplot, which is functional, but feels like they got stuck in a corner and that was their way out of it. So, for everything there is to like about it, the metaplot, I think, the metaplot and the way that intersects with big H concepts of historical progression and cultural borrowing, I think are pretty unnuanced and an issue. GA Chronicles doesn't hide the fact that it's first and foremost absurdist steampunk Sherlock Holmes. But then it leverages that to its advantage to keep things lighthearted while actually talking about a lot of, like, really interesting, like, historical events and, like, social historical issues that are endemic to this period. So, modernization of the forcible modernization of Japanese culture and the tensions that causes, the strained political relationships between imperial powers and Japan trying to establish itself as its own imperial power, a bunch of social history around class and race in Victorian London, the sort of contradictions of great scientific optimism being used to disguise, if not actively enable, horrible human rights abuses and pseudoscience. Right? They engage with all of that, which is wildly unnecessary for an Ace Attorney game, but gives it a lot of goodwill. Also, it's just delightful. It is an adorable game, and we love it dearly. And it, being a fun game to do that does history, is itself really important. Like, none of the examples here, I think, are particularly fun games. So, we like when games are being fun. So on that note, Elden Ring. Comment section, I see you. Oh boy. What the heck do we do with Elden Ring? Crab? Yeah. Ignore it? Yeah. Not a bad plan, but you know, I'm locked in. This is what happens when you have to deal with like medievalist fantasy games and you say that you make them forcibly historical. So I mean, it is more real. It's not really at all realistic. You don't have to. There is crafting, but and vaguely herb gathering, but mostly it's just stabby stab in a ruined world. And I'd say it's conceptualist, because the narrative pretends it's conceptualist, that you're looking at like, oh, historical decay, and this fall from grace, and something rediscovered, something, I don't know. Mechanically, you run around, you fight things, and then you run around and then you fight things, and then you run around and fight things, and then in order to learn about, and then you will spend 72 hours reading item descriptions and then just go on the wiki to have them summarize what the heck the story's supposed to be. I just think this is the most plot-centric and straightforwardly narrative of the Souls games. But yeah, its mechanics and dynamics are just not... They're neither realist nor conceptual. Which is fine, because, you know, it's a fantasy game, it's not trying to be a historical simulation. Well, convey a less sleepy wave back, Wolfie. Fictionality. Obviously. Not as high as it could be. But very high. Referentiality. This one's tough. I think it's down here. I think the reason it's down here... there are references. A lot of material culture are references. We talk a lot about material culture because that's what the game works best as. Right, if you're doing like internal archaeology of the game as a teaching of archaeological methods, the game is really good at that. If you're trying to do other types of historical research and other historical frameworks in the game, it's not good at doing that. So yeah, a lot of the references are material culture. I will say I give it props for being the only game to have the correct number of churches and it's not Wales. The church density in this game is second to none, and is the most real-world thing about the game. The fact that they're all busted up is kind of an issue, but we can just pretend it's the 16th century. And educational design. We're gonna give it like 2% educational design. The reason why we're gonna give it like 2% educational design is that it uses a lot of the tools of education. We can go higher than that. It uses a lot of tools that I think would be really good for educational design, like item descriptions, mostly item descriptions, honestly, but mostly just item descriptions. I think work really well in a historical, explicitly historical setting. It's just that, you know, the thing that they're educating you on is not real world history. It is a fictional history, and it's not a very good fictional history at that either. There's my free spicy take. The worst part about Elden Ring, apart from its representation of indigenous and enslaved peoples, is all the parts that George R. R. Martin had any contact with. So, I'm gonna hit it right right about even with Pyre. I'm gonna hit it like exactly even with Pyre in that it is fantasy. It's not trying to be a history game. But if you're trying to teach archaeology, right, think about historical frameworks, historical methodologies, there is a lot of potential to be using Elden Ring to do that archaeological work. If you're using anything that's not archaeology, I think it's actually actively bad, because the more you apply other frameworks, the more problems crop up. And that is instructive, but it doesn't make it a good history game, that makes it a bad history game. So, yeah, there's that. Rat, you just got an ad, what did you miss? You missed Elden Ring. You missed me saying Elden Ring is a bad history game. My spicy take is I don't think it's also a particularly good... The best part of Elden Ring is running around on torrent, looking at the pretty landscapes. Which is not the mechanics of Elden Ring, or the thing it makes you do most of the game time. Anyway, let's move on to more wholesome topics, like Stray. Quite realist. It's just that the realist is you are a cat. Conceptuality. It's got a little bit of conceptuality, but I don't think... Right, mostly we are a cat. Fictionality. Pretty fictional. It's a sci-fi futurist setting. What do you expect? Referentiality is basically negligible, and educational design is also basically negligible. Right, so why is this even on the list? Right, because it is set in the future, in a cyberpunk dystopia inhabited solely by robots and one kitty cat. Well, 4 kitty cats, but we kind of fell and got separated, and it's sad. But, right, it is referencing real things in that they explicitly say that it's inspired by the Kowloon walled city, which was in the 80s? Question mark? It's a real thing in Hong Kong? I think it's Hong Kong. But also we did a lot of like meta history of cyberpunk and its commentary, and so a lot more like cultural studies than actual historical studies. So yeah. But it never references the Kowloon Wall, so you have to go into paratext to do that, so it gets no points. Mostly the conceptuality here is historical like surveillance mechanisms. Right, we don't really get to engage with those apart from being an anarchist. We are a cute kitty who is also a little bit an anarchist. So yeah. Oh yeah, the Kowloon Walled City has been torn down. I don't remember exactly when. I looked it up all on stream. But this was in like July and August, so it's been a while. Stray. Stray could honestly go like not even on the list, because it doesn't really do any of these. Like this is the least history game of the lot of them. So honestly, this could just be like, oh, goodbye Stray. Okay. I guess it has to be on the board for it to stick around. That's fine. Stray. Alright, Ailey. Have a good night. And Aleph, welcome back. We just finished shitting on Elden Ring and then saying that the Stray does not belong on this tier list, because even though it's a history game in that I played it, it's impossible to categorize. So it's just gonna hide up in the corner and be cute. Anyway. We are at over 2.5 hours. We have quite a few games left to do. Expeditions Viking. This was a game that we played basically the first act of, and then we're like, okay, we played enough of this. Because it's not turns out it's not a very good streaming game, but it is a CRPG set in the early 9th century in Denmark and England. It's better at doing Denmark than it is at doing England. So we're gonna give it some, like it's got like 75% realism. We are not really embodied, it's isometric, and we control the whole cast of characters, and we like travel is often highly abstracted. But when we're wandering around town spaces talking to people, we get good control over our dialogue options, and obviously a lot of time was spent on combat design. Conceptuality is also pretty high in this game, because we are a Jarl, and so we have to navigate the social systems through abstracted upgrades, deciding on how much we're engaging with practices of enslavement, folklore, all those things, and how those influence, how much we care about those, how much we prioritize those, and how we navigate that broader social life, both in England or in Denmark and on raids in England. So I'd say it's actually more conceptual than it is realist. Fictionality. Fictionality in this game is extremely low, honestly too low. Right? Notably, yes, Didarian, yes, the anachronisms are very real. Dual-wielding axes, whatever. They're both bearded axes at least, but yes, it is very much a pop-cultural Viking stereotype. We can maybe bump it up a smidge more then. The place where I say this is too low is, right, the naturalizing impulse is what I'm going to call it. So the idea that, like, spirits in burial mounds aren't allowed to be spirits, they have to be drugs plus people trapped inside, alive. Not a great look, don't super love it. So, right, that is almost makes it too non-fictional for my taste. A healthy dose of fictionality is health, good for you. Referentiality through the goddamn roof. This game is incredibly referential in that almost everything they are referring to is real. I think everything except the town and characters that we're from are real, but, right, Sigurður is real. The towns we went to are real, but not necessarily founded yet. Reba is real. The raiding culture that they're referring to is real. All that stuff is, like, explicitly referential, there's a ton in it. Educational design, there's none. There's none. Even though it's all set in a bunch of real stuff, they're not translating any of that into things to help you, like, bring that out of the game into real life. They're just saying that we did a bunch of research and we made this game, you go have fun in this game. So it goes. Oh, that's the wrong one. Expedition. Now, I will say, right, this is going to go in Fantastic History. Wow. That was not even close. There we go. This is going to go up in the Fantastic History, but it's not going to make it up into Pentiment tier. This is a case where mechanically it's kind of reliant on being an expeditions game, so it's got some franchise constraints, particularly its combat mechanics, that And the fact that it's a CRPG, that you kind of hold it back from how battles worked. They do some things to suggest to push towards it, but broadly speaking, battles very much turn into people running at each other, hitting each other hard, with no sense of formation or that jazz. So it's gonna end up here. There's also some problematic stuff on kind of Danishisms and the some implied implicit ethno-essentialism going on in its portrayal of like diversity and historical travel and awareness of other cultures, and also it's bad at portraying England. Almost immediately we ran to Druids TM in Northumbria in the 9th century. So that holds it back from being truly amazing, but overall I think it is a really, really rich portrayal of 9th century Denmark. It was literally 20 minutes after landing in England that we ran to a druid, and I was just like, why? Why did we have to do that? Anyway. Another game that is extremely hard to categorize. Right, this is gonna go up next to Stray, let's just be honest. But chat, sacrifice your child points to the cult's totem. We love the Armchair Historians. This was such a fun playthrough, y'all. This was our Halloween playthrough. But this was just so fun. Cause we just hung out, we had a bunch of good history trivia. Thank you, Raptorus. Good history trivia, good talking about cults, hanging out, having a good time. That being said, realism. Slightly more conceptual than just realist, but that's fine. We are sheep. Sheep. Referentiality is present. Most of the mini-bosses were references to the Ars Geesia, or the Lesser Key of Solomon, as it's the text in it is sometimes, or the manuscript it's in is sometimes known, I believe. So, you know, there is, now we can give it more referentiality for that. And educational design, obviously, non-existent. It's lovely, though. We thoroughly enjoy this game. As a history game, this was very casual, hang out, have a fun time. Go join Stray in cute category. Beautiful. Then we have 5 left. 5 more. 5 more before we're done for today. Plague Tale Requiem. There were also a couple things of like Slavic references in there, weren't there? Yeah. The easiest one here is educational design, go way down. How realistic of a simulation is this? This is super duper realist. It's not survival games level of realist, so it's not, because we don't have to like eat. But otherwise, right, The Last of Us Rats is a very realist genre. Conceptuality. There's a little bit. Right, it is concerned with historical memory, but we don't have plague, accelerated plague outbursts, etc. And so we get a little bit of discussion of like how are different communities responding to this, how do you as children navigate that, but in terms of the mechanical ability of the player to manipulate that, it's completely non-existent. And so this is a very unconceptual game in terms of being able to actually explore those dynamics and pull on threads. Fictionality. It's going to go just below middling, because it is set in a real like year, 1351, in a real place, But it's very much an alt history, with, you know, the rats. Also, the plague of Justinian starting in an island off the coast of France. Oof, Darren. Hopefully it's not actually quite as bad as Yersinia Pestis, because otherwise we salute those who are about to fall. Moratori takes like that. There have been worse mistakes than that in media. This is true. You were correct. There have been bigger mistakes, but oh man, is it a doozy. Byzantine medical laboratory prison on an island off the coast of France causing the plague of Justinian is still a take. Also, yeah, let's give that a few more points for the ending. For nuking the city of Marseille. That feels like maybe we should acknowledge the fact that we just nuked the city of Marseille. Apps in the chat for Foxglove? I think this one goes an interesting concept. Actually, it's, yeah, probably just a smidge above God of War 2018. Right, solidly interesting concept. The environments are incredibly gorgeous. I wish they had more color in interior urban environments, but right, the sections where we're just wandering around seeing people be happy, even when there's spooky cult layers over the top of it, is delightful, and I love it dearly, right? Those market scenes where we could just wander around towns and look at the mountains in the distance, beautiful. Incredible. Asobo's environment art team are the best in the world, and I'm not afraid to say it. And the narrative went a bit, it jumped the shark just a smidge. Right, Plague Tale Inquisition I think was actually a better historical narrative than Plague Tale Requiem is. But even though there are a lot of individual moments in Requiem that are better than in Inquisition. Next up, technically this should have been way up, like up here, up by New World, because we did play Dawn of Ragnarok. There it is. I should say, Dawn of Ragnarok. Realism is pretty high. Right. Actually, no, realism's extremely high. That's kind of the point. Assassin's Creed is the epitome of the realist simulation. Conceptuality is, though, extremely low. The raid mechanics try and make it a little bit more, but overall the conceptual, it's not interested in simulating conceptuality. Things automatically restock, the upgrades make no sense, blacksmithing makes no sense. So, this is, like, Assassin's Creed, right? If we have Paradox being intensely abstractly conceptualized with very little focus on the, like, really zoomed in on single person, single environment realism, Assassin's Creed is the opposite, where it's really close, really about the historical setting, with much less regard for the historical systems. Still a little bit, but very little. Fictionality. High. Referentiality, especially in Dawn of Ragnarok. Oh, no, this goes higher. In Dawn of, if we're looking at just Dawn of Ragnarok, the fictionality is extremely high. The let's put it there. The referentiality is through the roof, because it's all references all the way down. And the educational design of specifically Dawn of Ragnarok is non-existent. If you want to ask why I think Assassin's Creed Valhalla is middling at best as a historical game, this is the slider to look at. Right? And then there's Discovery Tour, which has its own graph. Discovery Tour has a completely different graph. Matter of fact, I might even be able to do this. Hold up. Hopefully this doesn't break everything. Yeah! I change a few things in here. That goes down. That goes up a bit. Look at how wildly different Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Dawn of Ragnarok, and Discovery Tour of the Viking Age actually are. Right? These are the same game, technically. Not really, but technically. What am I supposed to do about this? So, yeah. Dawn of Ragnarok hurt. But honestly, even if we didn't say Dawn of Ragnarok, if we just looked at Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I don't know that this graph changes very much. Right, Dawn of Ragnarok is far and away the most egregious, but does this graph actually change if we include the rest of the game? Thank you for the 12 months of Tier 1 subscription, Billy Warren. Ancient Aliens, the game is an easy S tier in your humble opinion. They get so much right about everything. True. Though I believe that's also called the Forgotten City. Which, you know, fantastic history game. Does the education... yeah, maybe the educational design goes up a smidge because you're allowed to talk to people. Right, there's a lot of, like, writing through where they're telling you about the history. Yeah, so I'd agree with that. The educational design has a little bit more outside of the fantasy DLC. But yeah, no, it's... yeah, and people act surprised sometimes that I have problems with Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I mean, I think that sums it up real good. So, moving on, another Viking game, Valheim. I'm recording this one because we played it with Sarah and L. Jackson a few weeks ago, and that was great fun, and we had a great time with it. I highly recommend watching those VODs. Let's go check out, like, Sarah and L's work. Let's see if I remember the thing. Sarah MDVL. I think that's the... Nope, I definitely spelled that wrong. Let's try that again. Twitch.tv/ with an H there, MDVL. I can't type. Holy shit, I'm so bad. Chad, if someone could actually look up the correct one, it should be SIRRAHMDVL. Wow, I have clearly been talking for 3 hours straight and my brain has shut off. Someone could drop the correct link. You should all go check out Sarah Nell's work because it is lovely. It is doing a lot of stuff, hopefully soon, of getting more guests on to be able to talk about a variety of historical games. If you like my stuff, you'll like her stuff. Easy as that. Realism. So, Valheim, right, survival crafting games are the most intensely realist category you can do, where you have to be managing food, water, sleep, all the boring nitty-gritty stuff. It takes some, like, a little bit down, just a smidge down, for building, being this very fast thing, but you still have to gather the resources, harness them, do that stuff, right? It is as real. This is the most realist genre of game that you can get. Its conceptuality is non-existent. This is not a game about historical systems. This is a game about a very embodied real-time experience of you going forth and doing violence. You can read some conceptual stuff out of that, especially eco-colonialism and the idea of the terra nullius. But that is, I think, despite the game, not something the game actually cares about. Fictionality, quite high. Referentiality, slightly higher. Like, when you're in a fictional 10th world, you're doing, like, we can give you a little bit of conceptuality here. This game gets a little bit of conceptuality as a treat because it does Neolithic, Bronze Age, Iron Age, right? It's... As you progress through the game, you unlock, even though it's all nominally Viking Age, you actually do a little bit of, like, historical development and building grander and grander things and doing more and more violence. And if you want to make an argument that that is a conceptual historical development as you progress through time, great. You could also argue that it's just nonsense, and that'd also go great. And educational design is non-existent, because it's not trying to be. And that's okay. So, Valheim. Thank you, Raptorus. I gave up attempting to type, because clearly I can't. Valheim, we're gonna... This extremely crowded, lower B tier. Yeah. I think it's in there. I don't like survival crafting games as history games. There's a lot to commend them of being super embodied experiences. I don't think this game manages that particularly well. How many games are left? 2. 2 games are left. But yeah, I think that's solidly average, right? Somewhere in BC tier of being interesting, an interesting concept, but with dubious execution, bordering on just being too fast, too fantasy. Next up, God of War Ragnarok. The but Nordic continues. So God of War 2018 is a great starting place here for comparison. Pretty highly realist, not the most realist, but pretty highly realist. This game is still not very conceptual, but it is a little bit more conceptual. Right? because our actions specifically tie into a much broader scale of thing. Obviously, yes, the last two games are games we are still actively playing, so this is based on my current perception. No spoilers if you disagree. But that being said, I'm farther ahead than the streams are, so I know some bonus stuff. Alright, since they've zoomed out the scope from God of War 2018 to be, instead of just us trying to get to the top of the mountain, to be about the end of the world, their engagement with various concepts, the ideas of the realms, and sort of colonizing and resistances to it is much more present. That being said, its fictionality actually also goes up a little bit. This is a game that is both highly fictional and highly referential in equal parts. Its educational design, smidge. Like Elden Ring, this is a game that has a lot of the tools for educational design. Also, God of War 2018, I think we should give that same smidge. A lot of the tools for educational design. In the journal entries, all that, the stories are being told, all that stuff. It doesn't actually applying those to, things that our medieval evidence actually has, or elaborating the way that they work in educational ways so much as lore fictive ways. So we give it a couple of points for that, but yeah. I think you end up with something like this. How does this actually compare to God of War 2018? That's pretty much as expected, right? You expect them to end up pretty similar. Lo and behold, they end up pretty similar. That being said, God of War Ragnarok. Oh. God of War Ragnarok is a better history game than God of War 2018 is. Firstly, they just have more. But second, they fix some of my problems with God of War 2018, right? Angarola is a fantastic addition. With a specific, focus on Aesir colonialism and the resistances to that is a really good focus. The inclusion of more realms does that, and so there's just, and the fact that they're willing to just engage in serious questions that have real world resonances, even though there's still a lot of discussion of fate, etc. I think that all checks out, right? So it makes it a better history game. It's not as good as Forgotten City or Age of Empires, but it is good, right? Don't let this say that it's bad. It's good. They just could do more, right? They're making some choices that lean more into the fantasy of it than into the history of it. The clearest example are the Gulons that we saw, right? The weird dogcat, the weird dogcat therapy things that pulled our card in Alfheim. Turns out, right, we figured out they're Wolverines. I should have figured that out because Gulo is the Latin word for a Wolverine. The plural is Gulones. I took Latin for 5 years. You'd think I'd know that. But yeah, right, instead of going, oh, this thing, oh, that's a Wolverine. Now, admittedly, a chariot pulled by giant Wolverines would be extremely but Nordic. Right, that's on vibe. Freya has a cart pulled by cats. Thor has a cart pulled by goats. Kratos has a cart pulled by Wolverines. Right. I think that'd work. But no, they just made them weird alien dog cat people. So, some of those choices would really help elevate the game that little bit more. Last up, Pentiment. Pentiment is... right, stylistically, this may be a little bit spicy. Stylistically and aesthetically, I don't think, right, it certainly is not as realist as your Assassin's Creeds in terms of its historical environment, or your survival crafting sims. But the thing I love about it is you have to eat. And that means you're going to people's houses. And it ensures you get two... You know, we skipped a couple of games, didn't we? We super skipped 2 games. We'll circle back around and grab those 2 games. Because we missed Steel Rising and we missed Kingdom Come Deliverance. Huh. I'm bad. Conceptuality. Right, while we're not able to see the systems pulling the threads, and manipulate them directly, the thing that you need to do to really be a fully conceptual simulation, the game is intensely aware of what those systems are, and within the bounds of this world, of this realism, of this individuated realist simulation, you are able to like, pull on those in some very small ways. And that gives me a lot of credit for it, or makes me give it a lot of credit. Fictionality. Like, 2%. It's nominally fictional, but no, it's... You could tell me everything in this happened except the murders. No, including the murders, and I'd be like, yeah. Because, spoilers, a lot of it did happen. Yeah, Tossing's not real, Kurosawa's not real, Andreas Mahler isn't real, everyone else might have... Martin? Real, technically, from a certain point of view. Referentiality. Literally maxed out. This game is nothing but a pile of references in the trench coat. Educational design. I'm not going to give it full... It has... No, never mind. It goes up here. It has a bibliography in the credits. 3 references to the trench coat kill Lawrence Rothvogel. You're not wrong. 1 reference in a very sweary body stole his book. So... It has a bibliography in the credits. I can't not give it educational design. There's the room to do a little bit more. But it has a bibliography in the credits. So, shocking nobody, Pentiment goes in Pentiment here, because Pentiment. 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 It also has the glossary, exactly. Now, the glossary is not the most in-depth, right? But yeah, right, it's got the tooltips of historical context for terms you might know. The glossary explores that, the character descriptions explore that, the narrative is just dropping material left, right, and center, and giving you time to explain those things, right? So, like when we met Benjamin and Rachel, we actually took the time to explain what they're doing, how they know each other, or how they know Klaus, what cities they're in, and like what the project that brought them into town was. And all of that is good historical information. So, you know, there's room to do more, but not much. Pentiment. Perfect. So, we then also skipped 2, so we'll, sorry Blues, we've got 2 more. Because I just skipped Kingdom Come Deliverance and Steel Rising. Kingdom Come Deliverance is basically max realism. It's more realism than Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's Maybe not quite. I know it's more than Valheim. What am I talking about? It is literally what happens when you max out this meter. Conceptuality is extremely low, though. Right? This is why it's easy to view these two categories as being a dichotomy. Because, oh boy. We obviously haven't finished this game, there's room for this to change. But, like, it's not engaging with systems, and when it tries to engage with systems, it does so badly. Chat, does anyone remember how much a pretzel cost? This is a game with extremely low fictionality, though not quite as low as, say, Pentiment. And a game with super high referentiality. Nah, this basically goes all the way up. The pretzel cost what, a week's worth of wages? I feel like it was like a week's worth of wages. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, its economic simulation is freaking garbage. And so we give a very low conceptuality score because it doesn't do systems well. Right? It doesn't do systems most of the time. There is no systems of like how food gets to table. You just have pots of infinite fruit. And when it does try to, it face plants. So, right? I know we're going to actually dock at some realism points. Let's dock at some realism points. Or no, rather than docking some realism points, let's give it a few more fictionality points. For the fact that everyone fights straight out of a fighting manual, despite the fact that that's not how that works. Yeah, I mean, the visuals, Lidso, are what give a good chunk of this realism score, because in terms of a raw environment, it is one of the best productions of late medieval Bohemia possible. The plants are correct, the animals are correct, though they do kind of just spawn in randomly, so it's not a good system for animals, but the animals are correct. The cities are in the right spots, the cities look right for that period of cities. The towns look right for that period of town. They make only a couple of changes in like the monastic community, so yeah, it like... The in terms of being an intensely embodied, physicalized experience, good. Yeah, we're going to dock a couple points for the lack of people of color and the bullshit claims of fake diversity, but you can check out the start of the playlist on YouTube for the Kingdom Come Deliverance VODs for the breakdown of my take on that whole kind of worms. If we tweak that up one smidge farther. They're not gonna like that, but yeah. Let's get you out of the way here. Now, as much as I wish I could, I can't honestly put this in the gutter. Right? As much as I wish this game could go in the gutter, it can't actually go in the gutter. Let's shorten this. You all know what I mean by that. But I think it goes down... It goes down... there. I think it goes down there. Right, it's definitely worse than Age of Empires 4. It commits bigger history sins. Alright, Blues. Yeah, we are, even though we are almost done, but please do get dressed. That should be important. Right, my big problem with it is that the part of the construction it puts all of its mechanical effort to is the ability of men to do violence. And then it does that to the point of making everyone look like they're coming out of a 15th or 15th century fencing manual, with alighting all the guesswork that goes into that, ignoring the question of who actually has access to that material, and how unlikely it is that everyone's going to be able to fight that. But yeah, it wears realism without the actual systems, and then makes a bunch of really, really bold claims, and then every time it fails to live up to those claims, I'm gonna dock it. It goes farther down. But yeah, right, it puts way too much energy towards violence, and not enough to more interesting historical periods, or to representing the systems that actually enable those violence outside of a vague, very cinema-inspired narrative. That then they make sure that we, being Henry, are not therefore supposedly lower class, are not particularly able to engage with, right? They specifically say, hey, you're not able to change these systems because you be poor, and one person. So then they just don't. And they use that as an excuse to not put effort into modeling those systems or thinking through how that actually works. Last up, Steel Rising. This is not a particularly realist simulation. It's not a realist simulation, right, in that it's very concerned with rendering the environment. But we're not doing mechanics that require engagement with that. Conceptuality, I'm actually going to give it a relatively high score on for this game being French Revolution but with robots, because it does spend a lot of time letting you talk to people about the merits of the various thoughts of the revolutionaries. Like, it's actually really cool how much time they spend letting you just talk to people. It's a good time. Fictionality. It's not completely fictional because Lafayette exists. And also Robespierre and Grégoire and Delafare and Raymond, etc, 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 etc. Notably, what that means is actually it's highly fictional but also highly referential. Right, we talked about these two not being universally related but rather just in tension with each other. This is a good example of that, because this is a game that's both highly fictional and highly referential. Now, its educational design is not nothing. Their item descriptions have a few things that are historical references, and its levels are themselves references that you can explore and see some stuff in, and get some explanation about. But it's not a lot of educational design. And then it face planted at the very end, with breaking all of its diversity stuff over the knee. Over its own knee. We hate to see it. Right, I think you end up with something like this. It's not super realist, it is embodied, and you stay with Aegis the entire time, but your mechanics are not, like, realist mechanics. It's an action RPG, you're doing a highly flashy, stylized robot combat. That being said, ooh, this is just too crowded. Right, there's a lot that makes it comparable to GAA Chronicles. Right, in that they're both ones that you don't think should be historical, and then the amount of work that they've actually put in representing these in interesting and honest ways actually is really impressive. I think of the two, GAA Chronicles is better and more interesting, and so we're actually going to put Steel Rising here. I think that's where we put Steel Rising. Because I don't think it's as good as Age of Empires 4 either. but it is better than Kingdom Come Deliverance. So, this tier list is a hot mess aesthetically, but hey, we actually accomplished stuff. Look at how cool it is. Man, that's a lot of games. That's a lot of history. Looking at this chat, is there anything you rabidly disagree with? I think these are all pretty justifiable. No, I gotta give AC Valhalla its due. It's not as much what as Gods Will Fall. Holy shit, this was a long year. This was also a huge year for the channel's growth. We went from, what, just about 2,000 followers at the start of the year to now almost 2,900. Which is wild. The channel's seen a lot of growth, even with being, like, taking a couple months off for vacations and stuff. The support has been unreal this year, and I'm super duper grateful to all of you for helping make that possible. And obviously, right, going forward, we got a lot of stuff. The current plan for, like, the first chunk of 2023 is mostly holding the course, trying to keep doing more of this stuff, more games. We're in a bit of a quiet period right now, though God of War is obviously going to continue well into 2023. Pentiment's going to continue well into 2023. We're going to start having guests on for Pentiment as well, which is going to be amazing. I need to figure out some other things for that as well. Obviously, God of War, I'll try and announce stuff like that soon for the next wave of guests. How try and make some improvements to that system going forward. But yeah, like, a lot more of the same stuff coming up, but a lot of focus on trying to wrap up things, have some sort of interim playthroughs, variety stuff, while we're waiting for March when Assassin's Creed Mirage comes out, and then we're back in the Assassin's Creed mines. That being said, there are some things that, if they go through, that I'm not ready to talk about yet, are going to represent pretty big, or cause pretty big changes to the channel, so stay tuned for those. We'll see kind of how they fall out. Big plans for 2023 is gonna, right, you all have been asking for merch. I hear you. I'm working on it. So, more to come on that. Trying to keep improving the presentation. Right, we rolled out part of the rebrand here. We've got a couple more pieces waiting to come in. To sort of help further fine-tune the channel, rebrand, new overlays, all that stuff. And then, yeah, just keeping an eye out for new games, trying to branch out a bit more, do more creative projects, and then after that, like, we'll see, kind of play it by ear. But yeah, I think mostly a lot of holding the course, trying to keep making this more polished for you all, keep making this, what's the word I'm looking for here? Trying to make this a more entertaining and more polished presentation for you all. But yeah, if you guys do have feedback for me, I'm always looking for feedback. If I'd had more time, I was going to try and get like a brief survey about your experiences with the channel in and ready, but I didn't. So we're not going to super worry about that. I'll announce it on the Discord when I figure that out. But yeah, otherwise, right, if you guys have feedback, please do, like, just let me know. Otherwise, yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up the day. We'll be back later this week with more of Pentiment. Well, more of the same, right? Some things are never changing. Pentiment is one of those things. We'll be back with that, I think, I'm looking at Saturday? Saturday. Kyra, I did confirm they are in public domain. So, I don't even need to redraw them. The little manuscript guys are just in the public domain, on virtue of being over 500 years old. Mwahahaha. So, yeah. If you guys did like this, do make sure, as always, that you follow, subscribe, and consider heading over to Patreon to further support the channel. I'm super grateful. I'm super proud of what we've accomplished in the past year here on the channel. I can't wait to see what's coming down the road. Because there's some weird stuff around digitization. So, like, a lot of the stuff for the Book of Kells is actually copyrighted. Trinity College is super litigious about using it. So, that's a good example. I think some of the stuff in Voynich might be. A lot of high-profile manuscripts they try and do copyright stuff on. So, we'll, I do need to just double check all that stuff, but yeah, generally speaking, manuscript marginalia are public domain, so I'll be able to use some of those. So more on that to come in the next month or so. I'm still figuring stuff out. So stay tuned to hear about March and what exactly designs are going to show up, but do get hype because it is on its way. But yeah. My brain's fried. Look, chat, it's been almost 3.5 hours. My phone's about to die, which means my camera's about to die, so we're gonna have to sign off here. But, yeah, I hope to see you all in future streams. Thank you all for tuning in for this. It has been a lovely time. And until I see you next, happy holidays, stay well, stay warm, have a good evening.